to the next level. Welcome to another edition of SchoolOwnerTalk.com. Now here's your host, Dwayne and Allie.
Hello, Dwayne Brummett here with Allie Alberigo, SchoolOwnerTalk.com. Allie, great to be with you, sir, and also our special guest today as well.
Yes, absolutely. You cut the intro off slightly, but you're in such a rush and anxious to get in here. I can see you're so excited.
Yeah. Well, you could still hear the music though. So
yeah. So this is one of my dear friends, good friends, Mike Pinellie. He runs East Coast Karate in Seaford, right? Seaford,
yep.
Right?
Correct.
New York, and been running a school for how many years, Mike?
Since I took it over for somebody. I started in the early 80s. It started in like 1978, and then my instructor actually handed me the keys, and he says, "Take it over." And that was, probably early 80s.
Wow. So over 30 years, this school's been in operation, and you've been running and teaching martial arts there full time.
Correct.
Wow, pretty insane. So so anyway, for all the listeners, Mike's system of martial arts is Kempo. We'll go back a little into his background, but I'm excited to chat with you, about a multitude of different things and how you made it through COVID to, how you run your school and so on. So, Mike, tell us a little bit about your background, your system. I know you trained with a lot of interesting characters and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, well, basically I started in 1971 with Al Tracy's system, Tracy's Karate. And I did that from 11 on up. And then I took a pause to play a little rock and roll, as you know, Allie, how that is.
Yeah.
Play a little rock and roll. And so we did that. I did that for a while. Then I came back, and it was called American Olympic Karate.
Mm-hmm.
So American Olympic Karate, I started basically back all over again. I just said, let's start back at zero and take it from there. And then that was pretty much a Parker system. Didn't really have many katas. It was really self-defense. It was kind of a lot of my instructors were affiliated with the PKA, if you remember that.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of kickboxing and a lot of self-defense and a lot of fighting. There was really no katas.
Okay.
And as time went on, we wanted to not get, beat up as much. And so let's do some katas to have a break. So we went back to the Tracy system, and that's where I met Al Tracy. And I was at his place in Kentucky, and we would study there on weekends, and we would do like 5 katas on a weekend. And all the instructors, including my partner, would say, "Okay, how do we remember all these katas? There's no way."
Right.
We couldn't film them back then. So we'd say, "Okay, you remember this piece, you remember that piece," and then hopefully when we get back to our studio, we can kind of piece it all together. And we did. Right.
That's amazing. That's very, very cool. So with your system now, what would you consider it? Are you more of a classical traditional style, or kind of like a combination of tradition and modern martial arts? What do you consider if a parent asked you, what would you tell them?
I think we're a little bit of both, more on the traditional side, meaning we still do the traditional Kempo, but if any of the Kempo guys out there know what I'm talking about, we don't need any more techniques. We know over 600.
Right.
Plus. So what I did was I took some of those techniques, I kind of threw them overboard, because how many right punch techniques do you really need in the grand scheme of things, And we implemented stick work, screaming stuff, and we did some stuff from Joseph Simonet, which is he's a master in many martial arts, and became my instructor for a while, and which I learned a tremendous amount from him. As far as martial arts goes. So he was more well-rounded. Kempo was kind of jiu-jitsu, kung fu, karate, judo, whereas now, and a lot of the MMA guys in the beginning were a lot of Kempo guys, but now they specialize things. So, now the Kempo guys that could fight, we really weren't ground fighters. So if you wanted to do MMA, you had to go to a school that knew how to do Brazilian jiu-jitsu. So they kind of branched out from there.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's a great history.
Now, how did you guys meet?
Probably Mike and I met through the tournament circuit, probably, right? Martial art tournaments.
Through your tournament, because when you started, we used to bring a lot of kids and adults to Allie's tournament, and we just became friends, and we would bounce off stuff to each other on how to make the tournaments better. Because we've always been, as many of the tournament people out there know, especially in the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s, it was a bit of a disaster. You know, you would have to
still to this day.
Still kind of is. That's why I think we done a good job in fixing that. You know, but you'd show up at 8:30 in the morning, and hopefully you'd hear your ring as a black belt, and maybe you would compete. Like I remember when I did the one at Madison Square Garden. I missed my division. I've been there for hours. How I missed my division is unbelievable. But apparently I didn't hear it. You know, so that's I said, that's it. We have to run our own and change things.
Yeah, Dwayne, part of the history is too that we were all running, our other business partner in the tournament circuit is Rich Facina, and we were all running separate tournaments, and we'd all support each other and you know, help each other out, and you know, make sure that I was there for his tournament, he was there for my tournament, he'd bring people, I'd bring people, and just between the three of us, we were doing our circuits as best as we could. But I started to see my enrollment in my tournaments declining, and I said, something's got to change. So I don't know exactly how we did it, but we all met and we got together and we joined forces to develop this tournament circuit. And we started to look at, and by the way, we just met this morning for breakfast. Although this morning Mike talked mostly about, you know, band equipment and monitors and speakers with Rich. But at the same time, though, we're always saying, like, what did we do wrong? And what could we fix? What people complained about and what could we fix? You know, and Mike's great for that. You know, Mike likes to process while talking. So he would call me up and we would chat on the phone, or we would meet and we'd figure out all the things that were issues. And now we run a tournament that runs by the time, like Dwayne, I shared that with you, right? You ran your tournament by times when you ran yours, right? Locally. And anyway, long story short, so now we run by the time, on time, and you know, we're doing so much. We cordon off the rings so that no one could walk on the floor. It's fully matted. It's all computerized with monitors. I mean, everything you could think about the Olympics is like what we did with our tournament circuit.
Nice. And I'll tell you, you know, that one tournament that I ran, based upon the way that you guys run the tournament, I got so many compliments. Yes, everybody showed up at 8 o'clock thinking that they had to wait to hear even though I told them you only need to show up a half an hour before, you know, your scheduled time. Nobody believed me.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's exactly what happens. You know, it's funny. We had a whole school remember Ali from Brooklyn come in, and the tournament started at 8:30, and they showed up at 10 o'clock thinking that was the norm. So when we explained to them that the beginners unfortunately have missed their division, the intermediates and so forth, and he was very respectful. He's like, wow, this is like a whole new ball game, and he's been with us from the beginning, and he comes on time and all this. You know what it is? I think now in today's day, parents' time is, well, it kind of always was very valuable, but you know, people would call us up and say, listen, my son has a soccer game at 4 o'clock. You think he'll make it? I'm like, well, what time is your division? They're like 10. I'm like, you'll be home having lunch and then go to soccer, you know? So I think the parents appreciate it, that they don't have to sit there like we used to have to do and huddle in a corner with your equipment and have one guy, 5 people sleeping while the one guy is holding post to see who's going what, who's doing where, just by listening.
That is exactly how I ran my life with O-Sensei Felix Vasquez, where we'd get there, we'd take a corner, we'd lay our bags out, we'd all go to sleep. And one guy was sitting on the bleachers and he'd be, okay, black belt division's coming up soon. And then he'd wake us all up. We'd wake ourselves up and we'd go and compete. But there are sometimes we'd show up at 9 a.m. and not compete until 10 p.m. It was just a horror show. And we knew that we needed that. Yet there are still tournaments that run like that still, and people still attend those tournaments. So we can't understand the mindset.
So let me first congratulate both of you on the news that came out last night, since you guys are both New Yorkers, that Governor Cuomo is stepping down. Now, you got to put up with him for 2 more weeks, from what I understand. But after that, we'll see what happens and, you know, what you're going to be allowed and not allowed to do. But either way, I still think this is a good step in the right direction. You know, Mike, what do you think about that?
Well, you know, the problem is that, you know, we're not defiant of what they say, but the problem is that they kept moving the goalpost. You know, first it was 2 weeks, then it's a month, Now it's 3 months. Now it's 4 months. And now they lumped us karate studios in with gyms, which is totally absurd. To lump us in with gyms, which have thousands of people, some of them, well, we have maybe a couple hundred, and some of the other studios, maybe 100, maybe even 50. So we could have easily done the social distancing and all that stuff pretty much from the get-go, but we were the last ones to get permission to open. The last ones.
And we're the ones that can actually dictate when our people come and not come, and the space in between. And yeah,
absolutely, we can monitor that probably better than most facilities, because we know, we send out a schedule. This is when you're going to come. We know how many people are in those belt levels. We know how many people are going to be there at the max, and we go that.
And Dwayne, too, is kind of interesting, like the process. And by the way, for the listeners that are listening to this and saying, hey, I don't run a tournament, none of this interests me, just take the tournament word out and put your class schedule in place, and then you'll be able to see how we worked on refining everything. So like Mike and I would look at it and we would say, okay, and Rich at times, but mostly Mike and I, we go, okay, we had so much space between this age group that sat and waited, because this age group went quicker. Because let's just say by the way, we used to run a division that never had competitors like 4 and 5 or 6-year-old black belts, right? We knew that wasn't happening, but we used to offer it because that's just the way it was done. So we said, we're not even going to run that division. We're getting rid of it. Boom, out. And that was unheard of, because people would just still offer it, but people would wait around. So we would literally analyze each division to be able to see where there was wasted time, and then we crunch it together. So we got it to such a science that, right, Mike, we're done by like grand championships are done by 5:30. Right. And we start at 8:30. And by the way, people are not there from 8:30 to 5:30. They do like a 2.5-hour window, and then they go home. So a black belt could show up at 1 o'clock. They show up at 12:30 to compete at 1. They don't even have to be there the entire day. They just show up at the time allotted, and we never run early. We always run on time. So, or a little bit later at times. But at the same time, no one has to ever feel like, oh, I better get there 2 hours early and miss my division. It won't happen.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because we've had people come up to us and they're like, Mr. Mike, well, what's going on? I'm like, well, what do you mean what's going on? It's 1:05. It's 1:05. They're doing this. And the division's supposed to start at 1 o'clock. I'm like, okay, so we'll start in at 1:06. Relax.
They bust chops, though. I think a lot of them know that we're so good. They're like, it's 1:02. Like they're just busting our chops because we're so, on it, that kind of thing. So
Mike, let me ask you this. Not that I enjoy talking about COVID, but it is a real thing. It has affected our schools. Right. One, talk about, the effect that it had on you. In your school, and then now where you see yourself now in the future for your school based upon all everything that's happened.
Right. Well, I mean, basically when it first happened, what's the first thing you say? Holy crap, now what? How do I get people on? How do I do this? And okay, so now we have to do Zoom. I had no idea what Zoom was. Right. I'm looking for a platform. People were doing other live stream stuff. I go, let's try Zoom. One of my instructors is pretty techie. He's like, Mr. Mike, try Zoom. I'll set you up. And we set it up. The thing about it was I couldn't have anybody at the studio except for myself. So I was working Monday through Saturday by myself. I had another kickbox instructor that did that stuff. But, we kind of went by ourselves for 8 months. And the hardest thing is to get the parents, because not everybody has the technology or the wherewithal to even figure it out. So to get everybody together probably took weeks to get everybody on. How do I go on? I'm muting. No, you have not that button. That's the mute button. Oh, goodbye. It was kind of like a comical thing in the beginning, but luckily I have very good clientele that they stuck it out with me. And what we did too is instead of doing just the Zoom and the martial arts stuff, we went to their houses after like the 3rd month, and we gave them stuff. We handed out masks, with our logos on them. And we did everything we could do to keep that, that group together and keep them motivated, because we all know doing Zoom, for a 6-year-old to do Zoom, it's hard. His attention span is gone. You know,
Right.
not to mention his dog is walking through, or his
Yeah.
cat is jumping on his head. You know,
Yeah.
and you're like, oh my God, you know, what have I done? You know,
Right.
I'm at this stage, and I'm going, oh boy, is this even going to help? Or how many people are you going to lose? You
Right.
know, luckily we just kept doing things on a periodic basis. Okay, every month we have to do this. Every month we got to send. You know, I would drive to everybody's house, and I would give them a package or something, you know, like a thank you with a T-shirt or something. We'd make up stuff, or wristbands, you know, East Coast Karate Strong, stuff like that, just to keep them motivated to keep going.
Yeah, and by the way, also Mike too, I know that you did virtual scavenger hunts
Oh yeah,
online. You know, I did a pet show. Did you do a pet show or no? I think I was the one who did that.
no, yeah.
And yeah, but you did the scavenger. Oh, you did bingo night, right? You did bingo.
I had more parents on bingo than I think I did kids, because it
Yeah,
would be like a Friday night. They can't go anywhere, you
yeah,
know, so they have a glass of wine and they're playing bingo.
yeah,
It's, you know, and then the kids got involved, so we wound up, instead of one game of bingo, I'm playing 4 games of bingo. Before you know it, it's midnight.
right,
I'm
right.
like, I gotta go. I'm like, I love you guys, but I gotta go.
Right.
I
Yeah.
I love the fact that, and by the way, you and I would chat all the time. And Dwayne and I mean, without all of you guys, I don't think I would have made it through. Like, I was so lucky to have people to share with and pick their brains and vent to. But this is why you're still around. A lot of our friends, right, Mike, they just said, nah, I'm not doing Zoom. I'm going to shut down. And they were done. Like, that was it. Or they maybe would do a video on YouTube that the kids could follow along with. And it was,
Yeah.
that was about the extent. They literally shut down. I don't understand why, though. What do you
Well,
think?
I think what happens, they don't have the drive anymore to go past that point. You know, they're almost at the time in their careers, they're like, you know what? I just don't want to do it, because what really happens is it falls upon the owner to get everything done. When you
Right.
have a small school, you can't say, okay, you know, Sensei John, do me a favor when you get home. You know, one good thing about Zoom, when they started to come up with these breakout rooms, I could have an instructor at home, and whoever was online, I could say, okay, there's 2 different belts or 3 different belts online. I could send that group to, you know, Sensei John. I could send this group to Sensei Vinny, and they could actually teach them while I'm teaching, and they don't have to leave their house
Yeah, that's amazing.
and come to the studio. So Zoom really, you know, they start to progress. They really start to implement some definite advantages for, you know, a martial arts studio. I'm sure it worked for a lot of other people, but mainly for us, they really started to upgrade their stuff as they went along.
So then now, are you still doing Zoom?
I have officially shut Zoom down months ago. You know, I had like 1 or 2 people. I couldn't take it anymore. You know, it's always the child, you hate to say it, that's, you know, playing with his dog that wants to stay on Zoom, because the parents, it's easier for them to stay on Zoom than come to the studio. You know, it becomes a habit. You know, what should I do? I have to do laundry. But, you know, Johnny, just do me a favor, go on Zoom today. You know, but then that became a habit. So when I shut it down, miraculously, Johnny showed up in class the next day. So it's really not, you know, I have another studio with Sensei Greg Stevenson, that he still has people on Zoom.
Yeah.
You know, and I get it, but at some point you got to pull the Band-Aid off, especially
Well,
at this stage.
I have people on Zoom, and the only thing that shifted in my mindset was that I don't spend the Zoom time with them that I used to when it was COVID shutdown.
Right.
So like we'll pop a class, we'll let everyone in. The parents are still, by the way, this is one thing that I think that I don't like, but a good majority of the parents no longer come into my school. They drop their kids off and they sit in their air-conditioned cars on Zoom. I like it to a certain extent, but of course we don't sell retail, we don't sell drinks. So now slowly parents are coming back into our lobby. But I do like the fact that if a parent couldn't get their kid there, they're able to do Zoom. But I just turn the class on and have the camera on the students and the instructor, and he teaches the class, and they follow. It's their responsibility to follow along. And then we'll turn and say, hey, we're doing sparring, so you do this. But we're not putting that time and effort into Zoom. And I still have people from North Carolina, Virginia, Florida that are training with me online that I never would have had, that are paying full tuition to be with us.
Yeah,
I mean, go ahead.
No, go on.
You know, but that's the, like, for Reggie Ali's sake, that's the advantage of it. You know, obviously, if you're not in the state, it's a perfect scenario.
Right.
You know, that's what I think has come out of this Zoom. You know, one of the benefits that came out of the pandemic is that I had kickboxers from different states doing my kickboxing class because I didn't have to pay attention to them really as much. You know, we're doing a kickboxing class, they're following along. It's not so much instructional as the martial art would be.
Right. Yeah. What are you going to say, Dwayne?
No, I was gonna say I still have a dedicated room, and we're still doing Zoom, but I would love to get rid of it. You know.
So why don't you do that? Why don't you just bring the Zoom into your normal classroom?
I don't want I don't want the TV in my room. It's a distraction, I think.
Well, you don't have to have a TV. You could literally sign in on iPads and then have the iPads as your camera. That's what I do. By the way, for those that are listening, I was looking for a 3-camera shoot, and I went online, and there was all these expensive systems. And I'm talking to Ryan, and I'm like, you know, I'm thinking of trying to get it where it kind of pans around the room and all this crazy stuff. And Ryan goes, why don't you just sign in 2 more iPads and let them watch on the iPad, sign them in under our name? And I did. So we have a front iPad, a camera hooked up to the TV and the computer, and then we have 2 side iPads. So we basically have a 3-camera view every single time. So if a parent can't see their kid, they just scroll to the next camera. So you could literally set 3 iPads up, and that's it. And they would just be sitting, and we Velcro them to the wall. That easy.
Okay. I'll have to give a thought to that. I just, yeah.
I like it.
I will say that I have people that have gone on vacation this summer and got on the Zoom and did their classes. I was amazed that they actually did that.
Right. We have people that normally jump to Fire Island, which is a separate place that people go and stay for the summer. And they're like, oh, we always go away for Fire Island. We like to freeze our membership. And I normally don't freeze a membership. I freeze payments. I freeze their time and give it back to them at the end. But I say now you could do it on Zoom. The kids could go to the beach and practice, just hook their iPad up and go on and do the class with us. They're like, wow, that's awesome. So that kind of took away their objection. I have a kid who's in Croatia right now with his family for 2 months. He's been training on Zoom.
Yeah.
So it kind of took away that objection. You know what I mean?
Well, there's definitely, like I said, definitely benefits to it, hands down. But at this stage, Allie knows me. I'm like, come on now. You know, because now what's happened is, you know, parents were using it as a crutch more than anything else. And what was happening was the kids that really needed to be in class.
Oh my gosh,
they weren't. Yeah. And that was the issue, you know.
Right.
My problem is my biggest population that's still on Zoom I've got 15 or 16 black belts that are on Zoom.
Wow.
Wow, that's a lot.
So Rick Kellerman is a good friend of ours. He's always on our podcast, and he didn't make it to breakfast this morning, but he's like commenting away. And he said, for the tournaments, hurry up and wait. He was used to that stuff. You sit around, you hurry up to get there, and then you wait around for hours. Then he said he knows one school that lost an entire martial art family because the tournament ran so late. They were so disgusted they quit the guy's school. And then he also wrote, I found that Zoom classes, especially with the breakout rooms and Spotlight, it has improved his students' performance and retention more than ever. And then his last comment was that he's mounting his monitor on the side wall with the camera on the ceiling mount so that the TV monitor is out of the way, yet the instructor can still view the monitor. So it's not disturbing the class. So that's pretty cool. One thing, though, one more addition to that is I also have parents that during testing will give the link to their grandparents who live in Florida to see their grandkid get promoted on promotion day. So maybe that's something for the people who shut down. Maybe offer that just on ceremonies and promotions so that people could sign in. Like I just taught at Masters Unite, my other good buddy, Andy Stigliano, who we'll hopefully have on here too. He had the Masters Unite seminar on Zoom. So people were from other states signing in and doing the seminar live with us. And I would turn to the camera and teach the moves on the seminar, on the video, which was pretty cool.
Yeah.
So any more questions on COVID?
No, I just was curious, you know, what you did and then what you're doing now. I'm envious that you actually had the guts to shut it down. Allie keeps telling me not to do it, and I keep listening to him, and I don't know if it's right or wrong, but so far it's been okay.
Well, you know what it is. Like for me personally, with all the students I had, everybody, I had maybe 1 or 2 on Zoom. You know, and it wasn't even we put out a kind of a survey thing to see what they wanted to do, and I got to tell you, 98% of the parents are like, I'm done with this. My kid has to get out of the house.
Yeah.
got to get to class because socially it's not doing him any good. You know?
Yeah. And for us, the Zoom is a 90-10. 90% of the people watching are the parents sitting in the parking lot in their cars versus in our lobby. And maybe a student here or there, or a few students on one day because the kid runs late. But listen, it's not taking much effort for me, so that's why I haven't done it. So Dwayne, if you could make it so it's a very minimal effort on your part, then that would be worth it. But I understand if you're paying a guy to sit in the room and working on that, just him as a dedicated instructor. I
don't tax my instructors like that anymore. They're rotated, so they're doing basically 2 Zooms a week, and they're rotating. You know, each of them only do 2. So yeah,
it still sounds like a lot of work. So if you could eliminate all of that and just bring it all back into one room, that would probably save you a lot of time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Mike, you guys, let me ask you, Dwayne, did you have more questions on that or no? So Mike, I have a question totally in a different area, right? So you have tournament champions, martial arts students that are in competitive environments, NASCA rated, some really amazing competitors. I've seen your students. What's some of your methodology or teaching methods that you do to produce that quality of student, right? I mean, and is that like, honestly, 50-50 in your school? You have 50% that they're okay, and then like 50% that are superstars. What's your percentage that are just those outstanding, like, and how do you get the people there? Or is it them, or I don't, you know what I mean? What the question?
Yeah. I mean, I think doing it so long, it used to be, we used to have a lot more kids that were, let's just say, better at martial arts in general. They were more athletic. Just in general, I think that's from a different generation. You know, like 20 years ago, Ali, I would have 30, 35 kids on the tournament team, and they were all good. You know, and when I set up the tournament team, it's not an all-star team. So anybody can join. Anybody could join in any ability. We will help them through. They don't get charged for it. You know, it's kind of like all my instructors know that that's time they have to put in. They're paying it forward, just like somebody did for them. Right. You know, and I had students that never won, and then all of a sudden started to begin to win. It took them years. Right. But I think somehow, for whatever reason, I think the generation coming in, that percentage has shrunken. You know, and when you find somebody that's good, you know, they're playing. They'll do martial arts, but they're also playing baseball, football, blah, 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 and they're pretty much good at all those sports. Yeah. You know. It's very hard to find. And then what we do is when we train them, we say to the parents, listen, this is an obligation. And sometimes the parents kind of, you know, they press the pause button thinking that, okay, so now my son has to, you know, he has to be there every Saturday for practice, you know. But meanwhile, if they're playing soccer, you know, and the coach says to them, we have practice every night, they do it. So I don't understand how martial arts, I mean, you know, they see their coach that year, you know, they see us
their entire life.
Every year. So that's what I don't understand sometimes, how the parents think. And I know sometimes the parents don't want the child to be left out. That's always their big thing. Well, you know, the kids in the neighborhood are playing baseball, you know, but Johnny doesn't really like baseball, but you're putting him in baseball anyway because all the kids are doing it. So now he's good at karate, but you can't go to the tournament because you have a baseball party to go to. Yeah. And then how many times have we heard this? You know, when we go to the diner or I'm around town, you know, a person will come to me, oh, Sensei Mike, and I turn and I'm like, oh my God, the guy's 40 years old, and I'm like, oh, who are you? You know, I was so and so, and you know, and I quit karate when I was 12, and I should never have done that.
We do that over and over again, don't we?
Over and over again, and I feel like almost doing like an interview with every one of them and then piecing it together, you know, and say, look, you know, but I think it's a lot of times it's the parents' fault. Oh, you don't want to do it you don't want to do it anymore? Oh, okay, you don't have to do it anymore. Well, but what does why does a 10-year-old have to make a decision like that?
Right. Well,
You're the parent. You're the parent.
I had probably like 5 parents in the last 2 months that wouldn't sign their kids up because I hold a yearly. Well, we'll do a month to month, but we won't do a yearly commitment. I only do yearly commitments. I know you do month to month, right? So in your school, right, Mike? You do that?
Well, no, I mean, I do a 10-month program, like, listen, what happened was we used to do a year program.
Right.
And people freak out. Oh, it's a year. They think they see the number or the word and they panic. Because little Johnny signed up. He's 7 years old. He signed up. And 3 months later, oh my God, he wants to be Batman. You're like, oh, great.
Yeah.
I just signed him up for a year program. Now he wants to be Batman. So what we've done, I just knocked it down to a 10-month program, and I don't have an issue. It's really, it's almost like, prices, instead of $3, you're making it $2.99, and people go, okay, it's $2.99, it's not $3.
Yeah, interesting. So these parents, they're like, okay, well, we can't do a year commitment. It's either month to month or not, and I've let them go. But I constantly explain to them, like, listen, I get it. You don't want to commit, but I don't want a parent that's not willing to commit. Like I only have time for people who are willing to commit. And look, I might have to go through more people to find those parents that say, no, we're doing it this way and we're committing. So, but I'm okay with that. Like I've had, and it hurts when you could see your enrollment bumping and your income level bumping, but I want dedicated people. And I explained that to them. I said, listen, I want you to be dedicated at least for a year. And then after that, you could change your mind, but you have to promise me at least a year.
Well, the problem is, Mike, I think that, back in the day, people looked at the martial arts as a way of life. And so therefore the commitment was not that big of a deal, because when they were signing up their child, they were signing up because they knew that martial arts could change their life. Now it's an activity.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that activity has lowered on the goalpost. It's baseball, soccer, karate. I've had people come in. Listen, my son's off on a Saturday. Can he? I want to sign him up for martial arts. And Allie knows me. I'm like, this isn't the place. Maybe you should go to Mommy and Me. This isn't the place for a one-day thing. This is, and I've lost them because of that, and that's fine, because you're only going to have problems with that person later on.
Oh yeah.
When they're coming once a week and their friends are progressing and they're not, and then they wonder why. See, that's the thing. I can't. It's the common sense factor. Allie knows. It's the common sense factor that I have a problem with people. Like what makes you think that your child is going to progress this far when they come once a week?
Right.
Why don't you just let him be a kid that Saturday? Just let him run around and jump and play in the playground, whatever you want to do. He'll be happy.
I remember being, and Mike, you and I are around the same age. Dwayne is younger than us, but
younger than us. Yeah. How did that happen?
Yeah,
I don't want to be on this podcast anymore. I'm the old guy.
Yeah, you are the oldest on the podcast, then myself, then Dwayne. But I remember when life was about, and I just talked about this the other day. Life was about, getting up in the morning, meeting your friends and going having an adventure, ride your bikes to a park or go play in the woods and build a fort. And it wasn't until parents started to become helicopter parents with structured lifestyles. Like these kids are structured. Like I used to have a kid in my school that two prominent neurosurgeons were the parents, and they had a nanny full time that had an iPad at the time. We're talking 15 years ago, with a tablet with their, Matthew, we're off now. We got to go to horseback riding. And then right after that, we're going to eat in the car, and we're going to, like, this kid was scheduled. I'm like, there is no time to be a child. It was literally nothing but schedule. And I think parents are hurting their children by doing that. I think it's a big issue.
Well, and then the exact opposite too, where they don't have anything scheduled and nothing is a priority.
Right.
Yeah, right. You have one extreme or you have the other.
Right.
And I just think, it's funny because even the kids nowadays at junior high and high school level can't write an envelope.
Oh my God, my secretary.
They cannot address an envelope. It's mind blowing to me.
I had my secretary, a program manager, about 7 years ago. She filled it out like, oh, this is my music stuff. But the letter was full length and it had the address backwards, and it was like crazy how everything. I'm like, have you ever filled out an envelope? She's like, no, I've never. I'm like, you're 23 years old. How could you not have even seen one? Let alone, you don't have to have filled it out, but you must have seen an envelope, right?
You must have gotten mail.
Right.
Well, the classic is, where do I put the stamp?
Right.
Like, you really want me to tell you where to put the stamp?
Not only that, what type of stamp? I've had instructors I've had to teach. Look, you're sending out a postcard, like a good job postcard, with a first class stamp.
Right. Double the price.
What are you doing?
Yeah. It is crazy, right? So I think there should be a school of, we should open up a school, not martial arts, a school of common sense.
Listen.
And I'm telling you, it would be really what people need, because I think that, and I read this the other day, that because of, there was a big, a poll done, or a study done, that kids who were spanked as children had a better chance of survival than kids who were not spanked, because they said the fear endorphins, I know this is kind of weird to sound, but they were afraid that fear endorphin trained their body to have that fight or flight response and to be able to figure things out, versus having a life of just words. If you don't listen, buddy, you're going to get put in timeout. There's really no repercussions, like where I have kids. My poor daughter, she texted me before, and she's like, so-and-so bit so-and-so on the arm. They didn't, this at camp. They didn't break the skin. And then she writes in capital letter, who bites people in the 21st century? She's like, who's still biting people? Like, are you still dealing with the 7 or 8 year old? Like, you know what I mean? It's crazy.
It's the you know what it is? My instructors always laugh, because when they do something a little off, or stupid, I go, you didn't take the class, did you? They're like, what class? And then I go, remember the class? They go, yeah, the common sense class. I go, yeah, you should have. To me, the common sense class should be implemented in high school at like 10th and 11th grade.
Yeah.
Listen, we'll make it easy. We'll give them multiple choice questions. You know, A, B, C, or none of the above. You have to pass that, and you have to pass gym.
Right.
Then maybe you can move on.
And be able to balance a checkbook.
Yeah,
I know. It's crazy nowadays, though, that we're looking at, and by the way, the youth, the kids that are in our school now, their parents are still from the millennial generation, right? Or before, a little bit before. Most of them, right? So they grew up in, and by the way, a lot of everything that they get is quick. And like, I always constantly, hey, I'm not going to say it. Hey, Siri, it's going to probably pop up on my phone. But how do you do this? And boom, there's your answer. Like, so they never had to do anything to really get to it. It's a quick, easy fix.
They Google it.
Yeah, they Google it. So, I mean, we used to open up a dictionary. I know I'm dating myself, and we had all these encyclopedias, and there was a little bit of effort that had to go into figuring stuff out. Nowadays,
if you couldn't afford that, you actually had to bike to the library and do it.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think
and open up that drawer with all those cards and go, okay, where is it? Where's the card?
Oh my God. That was the worst.
Okay, where is this? I couldn't find my way around the library if I tried. You know, and I'm like, I taught the library, listen, where is this? And then she'd get annoyed. Oh, it's D3. Where is that? Oh, row 172. Well, thank you. I couldn't have found that in the beginning, 172. Exactly.
Yeah. And my daughter too, just now recently at camp, I called up the other day, they put me on FaceTime. I'm watching on the camera as the kids are throwing crayons and paper all over the floor. I said, put me on FaceTime. I said, this is my house. You don't make a mess of my home. I said, every one of you right now, Mom, they're holding up the phone and I'm yelling at these kids in camp. I'm going, you clean everything up right now. And I said to my daughter, I said, listen, clean up is part of the lesson. So if a parent says, well, they were cleaning all day, that's because they made a mess all day and they had to clean their mess, so that we're teaching them that lesson. But most parents are very appreciative of us teaching that lesson.
Yeah, I think the clientele that I'm getting now is more and more parents who are saying, listen, I understand what's going out there in the world. I need my kid to suck it up. And my favorite 3 words, and do what he has to do to protect himself. Because I tell the parents during the testing and all that stuff, I go, look, like as a parent myself, my son is a black belt through me, obviously, and he was 18 when he got his black belt.
Yeah.
That poor kid, unfortunately, it was my son when it came to martial arts.
My daughter too.
Yeah, exactly. So, but and what are you going to do as a parent? You're not always going to be around.
Right.
So you're not going to be there, and you're going to be, my son's in Vermont. How can I protect him from New York? I can't. So I think what happens is they lose their focus on what the priorities really are, you know, and soccer's not getting you out of that situation. Dance is not getting you out of that situation, and it's funny when we, and Ali knows this too, when we try to ask for something, your son needs a uniform, they hoop and holler about a $40 uniform.
Right.
But meanwhile, they pull up in a brand new Mercedes, and I go, I just wanted a uniform. Your child, his pant legs are all the way up to his knees. I think it's time for a new uniform.
Yeah.
You know, it's like the priority is just shifted, like we're not there. But then again, I do have a cluster of parents that are like, what does he need? What does he need to do?
Yeah.
And if I reprimand the child, I go right out to the parent and tell them right away what happened. Because you know, you let that child get to the parent before you, that situation has changed. You know, it's done a 180, and now you're the problem instead of the child being wrong.
Wow, that's amazing. That's a little gold. We call these golden nuggets, or like bits of information that people should make note of when they're listening to this podcast. And that one right there is pretty powerful. So I like that, like, you know, getting to the source and telling them about the kids' issues before they get to change the story and get the parent looking at you as the bad guy. Now they're like, well, Coach Mike just told me you bit that kid in class, right? And now they're like, it's not like he pushed you and you bit him. No, you bit for, you know, and you fix it right there. You stop it right in the bud. That's awesome.
Well, you know, we do that, but then some parents, even at that point, are in denial. They still they still say, you know, I'll never forget. I had a child years ago, and I'm teaching the class, and he just turns around and wails the kid next to him for no reason.
Right.
I was like, holy cow, did that really just happen? You know? And I reprimanded the kid. I pull him out. I bring him into the office. There is no remorse. So you know there's something off. You know, if an 8-year-old has no remorse for just nailing some kid in the head, and I went and told the parent, and she's like, well, no, that couldn't have been him. He's not like that. I go, ma'am, you understand. I physically saw it. You know, and she's like, no. You know, like we've had those parents. No, be him. I said, hold on one second. I went to my office. I wrote a check. And I handed a check. I go, listen, this is the month that you were here. You know, this is not the place for you. And she's like, well, why? I go, because you're in total denial. Now, when he leaves, all the other parents are in the thing. They were like, thank God he's not here anymore. I'm like, well, why didn't you tell me? Well, he's a bully in school. Well, why didn't you tell me that from the beginning? Like sometimes you want the parents to give you information, you know, and absorb it. And this way you can maybe help the kid not be a bully anymore and make friends with the other kids.
Right. Interesting. Dwayne, you have more questions? Because our podcast goes so quick, and Mike is so and by the way, I give you credit, Mike. You have not offended anyone so far that I know of, and you haven't cursed or gotten angry. So your anger management classes and the medicine is working.
That's good. Well, I upped to 25 milligrams today, so I'm totally fine right now.
You're doing great.
Listen, I still have 17 minutes to offend somebody. I got time.
Exactly.
So I guess in all of your years of running a school, what are maybe some, you know, the top 3 to 5 things that, you know, school owners need to take in consideration when running their school in order to be a successful school?
I think obviously, you know, the customer service and you being on the floor. I know sometimes being a head instructor, you don't want to be on the floor with beginners sometimes. And I get it. You know, I don't want to teach 5-year-olds anymore. No offense to the 5-year-olds, but I have 25-year-olds that can easily teach a 5-year-old. You know, but sometimes the parents want to see you out there and on the floor.
Yeah.
You know, so if you periodically pop in to these classes every week and the students don't know which class you're going into, it's kind of they don't, oh, Mr. Mike coming in to teach today, you know?
Right.
Well, maybe I will, maybe I won't. And then I'll pop in and they're like, oh, good. You know, it puts a different dynamic in. I think that you're the head guy and you're teaching their 5-year-old, you know, not every day, but at least maybe once or twice that month.
Yeah, just being there is enough too. Walking out on the floor, pointing fingers at what needs to be done. People see you as an active participant, and that changes the dynamic.
Yeah, absolutely. Because when you're going on the floor, you're the guy. You know, it's kind of like when your father walked in the room and you were in trouble. You know, but the other way around, it was my mother. When my mother walked in the room, we were like, okay, everybody stop what they're doing.
The wooden spoon was coming out.
Yeah, no. My mother was a kicker. You know what I mean? That's why I had to do karate. I always tell the story. Why'd you learn karate at 11 years old? I go, I had an Italian mother. I had to learn how to block.
That's true.
Yeah.
Well, I called my mom yesterday, Dwayne, back to your Cuomo thing. And I said to my mom, Cuomo is out. And my mom's like, I liked him. Like she doesn't really know right now. I'm like, what'd you like about him? She goes, he was Italian. And I go like, that's it. That's his
it.
only redeeming
all it-
quality like that. No, he was an Italian. I like him. I know he was terrible. But anyway, so like it reminded me of the Italian kicking mom kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. My mother could have played for the Jets in like 1972.
Yeah.
She could have been the field goal kicker. Oh yeah, without a doubt.
That's crazy.
So
Awesome.
the first one is customer service. What else?
I think having a core of instructors that's good. I mean, a lot of times we rely on, it's kind of like you really have to train your instructors on how to teach and what you want taught and how to do that. There's a lot of different ways to tell somebody that they're screwing up without being nasty to them.
Right.
And I think that's, now, I mean, years ago, obviously, we all know, when you screwed up and you were a student, in 1972, it wasn't nice. It wasn't a nice thing, but that's what made us who we were. And we can't implement that now, obviously, especially since I can't curse on this podcast. Well, my instructor told me at 12 years old,
Right.
he'd be like, hey, Pinellie, what the blop you doing? And I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm sorry. I really didn't. But if you do that now, the kid runs out crying. And what'd you do to my kid?
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's the other thing. And obviously, we've all been in business for a very long time because it's our reputation that's at stake. I think what happens is a lot of school owners, when things start to go down, you start to search for things that you should be doing instead of things that you should not be doing, and just kind of tough it out. I mean, I found, like Ali says, I found that going back to the way I used to be, oh, don't worry about it. I had that time period where, oh, it's not so, let's do it this way and treat the kids, maybe a little lighter. And then I got students that weren't prepared to go out in the street. And it lasted a very short time when I switched it again. I go, we got to go back to the way we were. My instructors will come up to me and go, you would never let me get away with that. I go, you're right. You're 100% right. Let's get back to the way we were doing things. And the clientele that we want are the same clientele that has the same philosophy of what we're doing. Not everybody's going to like my studio because I'm kind of hard-edged in a way, but it's black and white. It is no gray area. It's right and wrong.
Right.
That's it. There's no middle ground. When something happens at the studio, I go to see the parents or whatever the case may be. You don't hear me say, well, they were having a tough time today. No, they screwed up today. This is what they said. This is how they said it. And this is how they treated my instructor. End of discussion, and then let the parent sift through that.
Right.
I get some of the parents that go, well, I go, there's no, well, this is what he said, well, Johnny was having a bad day today, or Tommy was having a bad day, okay, but that doesn't mean you have to act this way. We all have bad days, but it's how we treat the people, especially a teacher. Like I always say, if something goes wrong, I always say to them, would you say that to your English teacher in school? They're like, no. I go, so why am I any different?
Right.
They usually don't do it to me. Like they won't do it to me direct. They'll do it to the instructors. And then the instructors will come in to me and go, you'll never believe what just happened. I go, I'll believe anything that happened. Just tell me what happened.
Yeah.
Then I'll go in and address it,
Well, that's why the substitute teacher mentality, right, where the sub comes in and everyone acts like a lunatic. Right. I even with my poor daughter in summer camp too, I watch and I call up and I'm yelling at everyone, going, "How dare you?" But she has to also learn how to shut that down, how to be strong, and how to get. And by the way, forget about teaching class. This is the same thing with a young female in a job or with a spouse. We have to teach our kids, our instructors, to be able to stand up for themselves, speak out, et cetera, et cetera. So that's super important. I like the old school Mike, and me too, the old school Ali, better than I like the whole, the nicer version that lets people get away with thinking they could run our schools for us, or tell us how to run our schools.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I mean, you think about it. I've had parents that, you have a certain requirement. They're like, how come you have a requirement for you have to take certain amount of classes, of sparring classes for your black belt test?
Right.
And I'll go, okay, so let's just get this straight. And I'll say back to them exactly what they're saying to me so they can actually hear what they're saying.
Yeah.
I go, well, the requirements for black belt test is you have to do 10 rounds of sparring. So how do you want to take a test at a black belt level and not go to sparring classes? How does that register for you?
Right.
And they're like, oh, I see. Yes. So what? He did 10 classes 4 months ago. I'm telling you right now, he's not going to pass the test because he's going to gas out
Right.
at 10 rounds. He's going to gas out.
Right.
And it's going to be embarrassing because everybody's going to be there. And I have failed people on tests. And people, and some of the parents were like, yep, he deserved it. And some people are, how can you do that? Well, it's a physical part of the test. You have to do, for our black belts, the physical part is pretty difficult. You have to do like 60 push-ups in 60 seconds, like things like that they're obviously building up to at every level.
Yeah.
So I purposely have two parts of a test because of that reason. Because generally, if somebody doesn't pass the physical part of the test, they're not going to pass the other part. So we do the physical part first, and apparently, well, how come he failed the test? He could only do 40 push-ups.
Right.
Okay, but I said, and I tell them, and as instructors, it's not like we told them Friday night for a Saturday test. We've been telling them all year. Did you do your push-ups? Did you do this? Do that? You can't study Friday night for a push-up test on Saturday. You can't. It's not like that. You have to do it. And then when they fail, it's obviously now it's our fault.
Well, isn't it
the physical part of the test?
Isn't that interesting though? Like you said before, which is so super crazy. Like why the soccer coach gets priority over you as a karate teacher. And then you also said it again. Why do it's kind of like COVID. There's no logic to it, right? Wear a mask, don't wear a mask, wear a t-shirt, wear, whatever. There's no logic to it. But why is it that people think that they could go in and not do their job, but still pass the test? It doesn't happen that way in school.
Yes,
unless you get, I guess, don't you have to get a certain grade point average still in order? In college, you do.
Well, listen, I have teachers that were instructors of mine, and they literally say they have to give a 55. They have to give a 55 if the kid doesn't even show up to class. So I have this teacher giving 55s to kids that don't even show up to class because there might be that slight chance that they might show up in April.
Right.
And that if you give them a 0, they have no shot the rest of the year. But 9 times out of 10, they're not showing up the rest of the year. They're just not showing.
Yeah.
And what happens? They don't get left back, Ali. They push forward. They just keep pushing forward. And I think that mentality comes it trickles down to us. Like how come Johnny didn't get how come he didn't get a stripe today? Well, he didn't earn it and he didn't remember his stuff.
Right.
Well, how come? And I go right to the attendance. Well, Johnny hasn't been here. He's been here 3 times this month.
Right.
Whereas Tommy has been here 12 times this month. So Tommy knew what Johnny didn't. It's just the math. Don't take offense to it. It is what it is. And maybe Johnny failing will change. I've had people that change their whole trajectory once they failed. They're like, I'm never letting that happen again. But that was always my mindset. If I failed at something, I'm like, holy crap, I am not letting this happen again.
Right.
I'm not letting it happen again. Whatever I have to do to get it fixed and done, I'm doing it because I'm not embarrassing myself.
Right, but the problem was you looked at it as that you didn't look at it as it was unfair that you didn't pass. You looked at it as, oh crap, I don't want this to ever happen to me again. So I'm gonna make sure. That's where it's different. Is parents and even kids look at it now as I'm gonna piss people off when I say this whole equity stuff. That it has to be a level playing field when it is not a level playing field.
It's not
at all. At all.
No, it's not. And listen, then it is what it is. If I give a student a sheet of paper with the requirements, who cares who it is? Those are requirements. So either you can do them or you can not do them. But if you can do them, I've had kids fail. And, I had a kid actually during the test go, I don't got it today. And he says, can I speak to you? During a test, 50, 60 people in the room, 20 kids testing. He says, Mr. Mike, can I talk to you? I took him in the other room. I go, what's up? He goes, I don't know. Like sometimes you just blank out.
Yeah,
the kid practiced so much that he totally blanked.
Right.
So I went in the room and the parents applauded him that he knew for himself that he didn't have it. And he took the test the next time and passed.
Wow.
But this was a 12-year-old kid.
Yeah.
So I was like, holy cow, a 12-year-old kid had the common sense and the guts to say in front of all those people, I just don't have it today. I was like, holy cow,
Yeah, it's interesting. I think about 2 things. One, Steven Seagal would always test his people for black belt 3 times. It was known on the first time that you were going to fail. You knew you're failing. Even if you did great, you'd go in knowing you were going to fail. This is what I heard. I never experienced the test. Then the second time you were going to fail again or pass, there was a chance, right? But most of the people had to take the test 3 times. But he would want to see who knew they were going in and failing and not putting in the effort to being great, even though they knew that they were going to fail. And then he would just say, now you're off the list because they didn't put the effort forward. Then the second time when they came back, if they didn't work hard enough, they were done. But after they did that, the 2 failures, then he goes, now it was almost ready. They were ready for black belts anyway. It was just a matter of formality. But he wanted see how many people pushed. And it's like me with my guitar lessons now. I mean, I practice like a madman so that I don't disappoint my teacher because he's hard on me. Like he'll be like this. I told you 79 times how to do that. Like, what is wrong with, like, he'll yell at me, and I'm not used to it, but I love it because without it, I wouldn't be driven because I don't want to disappoint him. I feel terrible if I disappoint him.
So I think the thing too then is one, for us as school owners, we have to pre-frame our people to the best of our ability.
Right.
Second is we do not lower our standards no matter what. And then I think lastly is being tactful in the presentation of answering those type of questions, which is, why did my kid fail? And, I guess maybe one action step along with that, or one tactic with that, is just rephrasing the question back to them, and meaning stating the question back to them. So why did my kid fail? And then you just say, well, why did your kid fail?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. Why did he fail? He wasn't ready? How come he wasn't ready?
And I don't even know that I would say the word I don't know. I would just say, well, why did your kid fail? And then they have to, because I even do that with price. When people say, it's $169 a month, and then I just say it back to them. It's $169 a month.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, because what they're doing is they're trying to get me to justify what the price is. When somebody says to me, why did my kid fail? They're trying to get me to give reasons why. I need them to give me reasons why.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. And I haven't had that many failures in a long time, because, once you hear that people have failed during a test, then they're like, oh, I'm not. Yeah, they're like, I'm not going to go in there, and I'm not going to do that.
Right.
Which is how I would be.
Right. Well, I think that an answer to that, and we're almost out of time, is we have to then educate them on how we run our schools and how they should think versus what they think they should think like, So the more we educate them on our processes, the better students they'll become. And I think that's what you're doing now and I'm doing now by not allowing the bad people in because we just wanted another student. We saw them as trouble from day number 1 and so on. And now we're like, they're just not the right person for us.
Our studios are not a democracy. It's a dictatorship.
Yeah, that's for sure.
This is the way it is. And listen, I'm more than happy if people want to go to someplace else. I recommend other people to them, but I just tell them, I do what Richie Alley says. I have this little conversation with the parents to say, hey, listen, this is how we run our school. It's not. I make the kids earn a white belt. I know it comes with the uniform. It's simple. It's simple things that they have to do, but they know from the get-go that they have to earn everything they get. And that's awesome. It.
Me too. I love it. Mike, great interview, man. You did really good. I don't know why you were nervous and you cried beforehand, but I'm not sure why you were upset.
Well, it was the whole curse. It was the whole offending people and cursing.
No, you did great. We'll definitely love to have you back in the future and have you on as one of our experts on how to work with people as far as curriculum goes and build their school. So you did a great interview.
Thank you.
It was great. Yeah, it was good. It was great to actually put a face to a name, because Ali has talked highly about you before.
Are you sure about that, Dwayne? Is the highly part really sure?
Yeah. Are you calling me a liar?
No, I don't want to offend you.
No, I really appreciate taking time out of your day, and obviously,
It was great chatting with the both of you, especially Dwayne. I see you on the podcast, but obviously talking to you in person, on podcast is a little different.
Yeah, awesome interview. So, Mike, thanks so much. You have a great day. Dwayne's we have an outro that we play at the end of our podcast. If you want to share this podcast, it is on iTunes with your iTunes and Spotify. I believe you could get it on. So all you have to do is go to schoolownertalk.com to be able to get the podcast. You can listen to it in your car and hear it back and share it with, friends or whatever.
Yeah, and this is our 289, I think. Yeah, 289.
That's my number. That's my favorite number right there, 289.
There you go. See? You knew that.
Thanks again, Mike.
All right, guys. We'll see you later.
Thanks, Dwayne.
Bye.
Joining us for another episode of Martial Arts School Owner Talk Podcast. This would not be possible if it weren't for the support of our amazing sponsors. Please check out EliteInsights.com for all your website needs. LeadHunterMedia.com, your online digital marketer and content provider. Academy Kings BJJ Growth Consulting and Management at GrowMyAcademy.com. SparkMembership.com, the best darn software for school owner manager on the planet. GetKarateStudents.com, a martial arts growth consulting company for all your school systems. We will see you next time.